Hi everyone, I hope you're good guys, and today I'm gonna explain you how I made my Modern Techno 2 template, the idea behind it, and how I arranged the things and etc. So today we're just gonna talk about sound design and about each element separately, how I create them and why. And then I will do another video next week where I will talk more about the arrangement, mixing and mastering. So first, let's have a listen. So this track is a little bit different than the other, and there is kind of four main parts. I'm just gonna show you a couple of them, and I will put the link in the description where you can listen the whole track and the whole demo. So here we have the final break with the final drop.
Actually, it's about 40 years ago. It started with a drug that was an isolate from a cactus called Spektre.
You have part like this as well. The lead playing a little bit differently. We have part with vocal as well.
My curiosity was if such a simple molecule can allow me this type of openness, the so-called psychedelic experience.
So yeah, there is a lot going on. If you want to know more about the arrangement, the video will be next week. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell notification if you don't want to miss the video. So let's dig into it, and let's start with the kick. So my main idea for this track was to have like a kind of 808 kick, like not especially like the pure 808, but you know, something more like a round rather than the 909, which is a bit more like punchy. And so this with, I had in mind as well to add a kind of top layer with a bit of reverb to get, yeah, this kind of vibe. So here it's like, so yeah, the roundness and this percussion, a bit reverb on the top. So for that, I obviously choose a kick, which was kind of sounding like an 808 kick. You know, it's been processed a little bit, but I just pitch it down and I use my rack kick verb for that. So if you're not familiar with, I will put the link in the description. It's allowed me to quickly add like kind of boomy, like kind of rumble, but very subby frequency. This one, the rumble one, is more like, yeah, the classic rumble. And usually I put like this. You see the rumble is working with the pre-delay at this value, but if I bring back around this 200, the rumble is offbeat and it's creating this different kind of vibe. So both, I like both work. You know, I have kind of half period where sometimes I'm putting around there offbeat, sometimes I prefer classic. It's really up to you and what you like the most. And yeah, here just a little EQ to boost around here, around where is the kick, and just getting rid of here a little bit because I didn't really like it. And then I just add drum bass, which is a little bit subtle. You can see I just dry wet is 13%. I put here the distortion in hard to get this a bit more bassy sound. Everything is very subtle. It's like really to compress the kick and the rumble together. Add a bit of transient, a bit of crunch. You can see everything is kind of everything very subtle. Even the boom is very subtle, and then a limiter to kind of squash everything. Alright, then we pass to the second part, which is the top. So basically it's a kick where I just kept the transient and I filter it because I didn't want it low frequency at all. So just a bit of filter. Saturation is just bring this med high frequency louder and out general loudness anyway. And then so the reverb, so it might sound too much. This is as well a question of taste. I like it like this. It's true that I could have been maybe a bit more gentle on the GK. That's as well a matter of taste. I leave it like this a little bit to change, and I just boost around here making this percussion and this reverb stand out a little bit more in the mix. Then bring everything mono, and then after we have drum bass, which is basically an overall process of the 2 layers, and it's just like glue everything and make everything a bit more beefier. And you can see it's not that much. Just around 30% with compression as well. And then finally here I have an EQ which has I get rid of, I'm gonna talk first. I wanted to boost this one. Again, is to boost the high, mid-high, to really make the kick cut through the mix. And usually when I'm boosting, I always kind of will cut just a little bit before. It's usually a technique who works well. It's not like always the case, and here I don't know, the kick is just getting a little bit cleaner. Yeah, and then bass in mono and a limiter to really like squash everything and make everything super loud. So that's for the kick. Let's jump into the hats. So pattern here is pretty simple. I have 3 hats. I have 1 close eye hat and 2 open hats. I'm going to explain you why. So the close eye hat is playing straight 16 pattern, and you have the open eye hat who are playing off beat. I have 2 open hats. So as you can see, I have one like this, which is kind of straight in the middle in the stereo field, and the open, which is a bit more wide and a bit more noisy. And the reason why I've done that is, like, for example, when you start to track, you put your open hats and it's kind of, see, it's the beginning and like this. But then when you bring the stereo one, it's like making the listener understand that things are getting serious, and it's like your hats take another dimension and it's more groovy as well, honestly. And just the process, there is nothing special about just some EQ to boost, getting rid of frequency I don't like. I will come back to this probably in the mixing phase in the next video. And reverb, yes, all the hats there is in the rack. I have a reverb where I sent all the hats, and the interesting thing here is the drum bass. So basically the hats like this sound like this, and when I add, so it gets a little bit cleaner, and I just had a little bit of drive distortion. It's very subtle, bit of crunch. It's really subtle, and here the nice thing, I honestly discovered it not long time ago, because usually when I want to add transient to sound, I go upper, and because I thought like going down will reduce the transient, but actually it's doing something different. Like, for example, when you have a reverb, it will kind of cut the tail of the reverb. You know what I mean? So that way you add the reverb of the ass, it's kind of stopping. So it's nice because you ass still feel like in a space, they are still breathing, and like this you can get rid of this reverb tail, and it's gonna obviously make you mix cleaner. And because it's always that the hard thing with reverb, you want to put reverb to make you sound less dry, but if you put too much, it sounds very muddy after in the mix, and it's like just messing everything else with the mix. And bringing this transient knob a little bit down, it's very subtle, but I could have been more, but I like it to be gentle. Then for the ride, nothing special about the ride. I use the loop, just some saturation to make things louder, like usually. I will come back to that on the mixing stage about EQ, reverb, and because there is basically nothing special. Just I put it stereo. Like I like my hats to have my main hats in the middle, and then I have to have my shaker if I have, and my ride on the side. It's just making things breathe better, and everything starts working well better together. And yes, it's sidechain as well. And yeah, if you wonder how to make this kind of ride pattern, just check other video where I explain template. I usually made the ride loop with MIDI pattern, but it's pretty simple pattern anyway. So let's jump into the perc. So for this perk, as same goes the idea how I want it, like my track to be, like the bass, the kick, and the, I want it to have like this kind of, it's a kind of perk, but it's more like kind of a tom purpose. It's kind of between the perk and the tom, this kind of low tom rhythm that you can get with the kick. And I use 2 perc loops. One is like this, I just filtered, there is not that much process, you can see. And both together they're getting this nice sync, which is work well. And I use frequency shifter, just you're gonna see it's like, I don't know, it just sounds better. I wanted like to be the pitch a little bit down. I reduced the stereo honestly because I didn't want it to be like wide perk, you know. It was more like, it's more like the low perk, you know, working with the kick, so can be mono, you know. It's not a problem. And then sidechain, obviously to less space for the kick, and saturation, reverb. So if you wonder about all this saturation, reverb, I'm not gonna talk about now. I will talk about in the mixing. When I will talk about the mixing, I will explain you my way of doing things. And then low passing everything just to get this kind of tom effect. Perk 2 is a bit different. So that's how I had in mind. I think it's the Pleasurekraft mix of Space Date, or I don't remember exactly which track on drum code, but, and he used a kind of perk like this, and you see it's like the characteristic of this perk is like this kind of delay, this kind of granular delay, like Richie Houghton used a lot, or used to use a lot. I don't know if he's still using, but, and then after it's just because the perk is, you see it's very short delay. The thing is like, it's not synchronized, it's in time mode, and it's very short. So like this, you have like this kind of, yeah, granular, we can call this like this, I guess. And then a bit of delay to make it move a little bit more, and reverb to space it. And then I just pan it for mixing purpose. And you get this, and because it's playing like, offbeat, wait. See, it's kind of just before the kick. Alright, then we come to the lead. So both 3 leads are made with my Super Solid rack. So if you're not familiar with, I will put the link in the description. It's basically this kind of, it's a patch with this kind of Super lead. You know, I use like sawtooth, one is with 2 oscillator, one is 1 octave down with a little bit of detune, unison mode, and yeah, it's like there is after quite a heavy treatment to make things a bit louder, super louder even. A lot of saturation. This is a multiband compression. So yeah, if you wanna find out more about this song, I will put the link in the description how I made it. There is a whole video about that. And basically, the 3 racks are like this. There is just a few differences. This one, you have an envelope on the filter, which is giving you this kind of plucky bass sound, and this one, it's a kind of plucky sound, but you know, you don't have, you have less this kind of plucky effect. I mean, it's kind of different, you know, because the filter is a bit more open. So that was the main lead, and then after we've got the final lead, which is basically very similar to this one. So let me first talk about the bass lead, and I will talk about it later. So the bass lead, as I say, I wanted something like more like a plucky stab bass, let's say. So first I wanted this sound like to be more like at the beginning of the track, you know, before like the things start to get serious. And I had in my mind, yes, this kind of bassy stab that you can find as well. I think it's in Pleasurekraft Primordial. There is this kind of stuff, which is nice. And here like pattern is the way like it's playing with the kick, like offbeat. You see, it's like one is like completely offbeat and one is like just before the kick hitting, and then after you have a long legato note where I'm basically automating the cutoff. So it's giving this nice variation. It's like close, close, and then slowly the filter open. That's the main lead. Also, I have different purpose, but I will come back to it in the arrangement part in the next video. So then I have the same patch almost, which this one's gonna be like our main lead, and the melody is, let me show you the melody. It's something like descending. You see, it's like very simple. It's so I play around the octave 3, you can see, and then I always go down one octave lower. That's something usually work well, you know, like always having your melody with a couple of notes very in the low, and then playing that's usually work well. And here the pattern is pretty simple. You can see it's just going down like. And here is the thing is, I play G sharp, which is kind of out of the key. It's not, because the track is in G minor, and this one is like, but off the key, but it's work well. It's kind of adding this dramatic, stressful effect. And then to add variation, so the first one is like this, and then after, on the second one, just before the loop starts again, I add this high pitch note to kind of give this nice impression, if I can say so. And yes, after, so the filter evolves around the track. So that's the main lead. And then after, I had when I was creating the sound, because this lead basically it's a kind of mono lead, and you can use it in more like I use it in the plug mode for the 2 first cents, but you can use it as well more in the legato mode. You see, this one is the plug mode, but I can use it in the legato mode if I say in the note, and that's what I've done for this one. And I found out when I was looking for melody, I found out this melody as well, which is basically the MIDI pattern is similar to the one I just showed you. You see like one note playing an octave lower, and then after you have the 3 same note going down, but this time instead of being plucky and playing like short note, it's like legato. And because the thing is, this synth patch is in mono and has the glide. When you play between 2 notes, you obviously have you see, you have this pitch modulation between 2 notes. And so yeah, I came with this pattern. And the thing is, here I use, to make things a bit more interesting, because the thing is like quite monotonous and you can really get tired of it quickly. And I say, okay, let's try to add this color pad rack that I made, which is basically kind of LFO and on the volume, and you can get this. How I get this? You see, when it's up, kind of like scatter, like a cut. You can never play with the rate, but. So that's how I made the main. That's how it made the main lead. And then let's go to the Hoover synth. So that was the 3 main lead basically. And then after here, what is in like kind of blue, it's all the synth, but who are like not really the main element. They are more like in the background. Or so I have this Hoover synth sound. Sorry, which sound like this, which is kind of classic rave synth sound from the 90s. I've made a video as well about that. It's like basically same principle than this Super Saw lead rack, but there is a strong pitch modulation at the beginning. If you wanna find out more about how I made this sound, I will put the link in the description. And yeah, the thing is, here was like to add variation, because obviously is the main lead playing and you get really tired because it's a very short melody, so adding this kind of variation help to keep things interesting. So yeah, the thing is like the pan is going from the left to the right and the right to the left, and as you can see, that makes me think, I don't know if you watched the Awakening partying usually for the New Year's Eve in the glass houses. There is this kind of fireworks going from the left to the right from the top. That makes me think about that. You know, like if it was a fireworks on the top going from the left and from the right. And that's what was in my head when I create this kind of stuff. Then we have the Synth Shot. So that's a classic I've already used a couple of times. It's classic techno shot. You see, it's made with square waveform with a strong pitch envelope on the filter. I will put the link in the description for the rack as well, where I explain a little bit more how to make it. Yeah, that's the same. It's just like popping here and there just to add a bit of variation. I've played a little bit with the cutoff and the delay, so to obviously don't have always the same kind of perc shot. You see, very close, no delay. Open with delay. Here is a bit more close with delay. I always modify a little bit to just make each one a bit different or to don't have the same pattern. And yeah, that's just same purpose, and this one is just to add variation, you know, to add a new element, just to don't keep the all same 8 bar. And then you have ARP. And so this patch is pretty basic. It's you know, it's sawtooth, and one is playing on octave upper, slightly detuned. There is a sub oscillator as well. It's just adding a bit of harmonic, and so obviously low pass filter. And the thing here is always like how you're gonna shape the envelope of the sound. And here the thing is to have the amplitude envelope around 30 milliseconds. You see, usually when you want to kind of have a kind of flute sound or a kind of horn sound, you know, like you put around 30 milliseconds and you have this kind of sound. Rather than around 10 milliseconds, it's more like plucky. And if you want even more like brassy pan sound, it's more like around 60 milliseconds. But yeah, and the thing is, the fact that I don't have any sustain and I'm putting the decay at 40 milliseconds, the sound cuts quickly after the attack. The sound is shut down. Let me show you if I. It's kind of. This way is kind of more sharp and more dynamic, if I can say so. About the note, so basically it's an ARP with in diverge mode. If you wanna find out more, just go to check in the live manual. It explains like which note is playing. I can't tell you honestly. What I can tell you is about the MIDI pattern. So it's basically the root note, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So +5, which is the fourth. And you have the fifth, and then you have this one, which is the -6. I rather to count, you know, usually what is working in the minor scale is 0, +3, +5, +7, it's like semitone +8, and then you have one which is like 1 octave upper than the root note. That way it's creating that. And the cool thing with that is because it's 5 notes, so it shouldn't be like a 1 bar loop or 2 bar loop, or like it should be something like different than the main theme, which means like the ARP will be always playing different notes than the main lead. Kind of polymeter, if I don't know if you see. And then after the process is still as usually saturation, EQ, panning a little bit, and delay and reverb the rest of the track. I just use it for the delay and the reverb. You know, I like to use this delay in like this 3 and 16s with around 30% and 30% feedback. reverb, a little bit longer decay, because as it's something like here, the harp is more like something in the background to help with the tension, so it has to be like, yeah, a bit more in background, and putting the decay a little bit up and with a bit more dry wet help that. And yeah, then you have the Synth Horn here. I use one of my Predator, one of my wavetable Techno Predator bank. You see, it's this kind of, the idea is like always is something very common is having this kind of Synth Horn, like you have, you know, in the movie trailer, you always have like this kind of Synth Horn and with big drum hit, and that's always like this, and that was the idea behind, because this works really well for your break to attention, or even when you drop, it's like a very powerful thing. So really important for this kind of techno, and it's the same. It's more or less the same principle than the Super Soul lead is. It's like sawtooth, one with an octave lower than the other, a bit of low pass. Important is to have like the unison, and yeah, it's, you see, that's the key. And then you need amp and saturation. Amp is kind of accentuating this buzzing effect, and saturator in the Archive mode, which is just making things fucking louder, and just, yeah, echo reverb to put the sound in the space and making it brief as well. And I'll just add a little bit of EQ just to get rid of. So that's very helpful. That's help transition for the break, like here. It's like, you see, it's like every 4 bar, and it helps. It's just work, I can't explain. And then we have the vocal. So here for this track I wanted to add a vocal, but obviously not like a kind of singing vocal, more like something, a text, like someone just speaking. And the great thing was to find an interview. I've made a video about that, how to find a good vocal for your track and where to find this kind of stuff. I will put the link in the description. So the way I process is I record an interview from a YouTube video, and the thing is, here you can see it sliced into the drum rack, but was let me actually show you. It was initially I think it was in the simpler initially. And the thing is, when you load a sample, you can slice it, and let me up, and you have this slice mode, and obviously you can tweak and make the sensitivity less, and like this you have just like the way I was doing like this, you know, some people may just like kind of cut it and put it in audio in the track straight away. I like to use live because like this you can really reinterpret and put the sentence in a different order than what it was originally.
40 years ago, I started with a drug that is an isolate called psychedelic. A simple molecule.
And you can really rearrange things how you want. And so that's why I rather choose the rack. And because the thing is, when you right click here, you can just slice into a drum rack, and you're slicing, and then you have all of your samples that you can pitch individually and stuff like that. And you can even like obviously make it longer or just like shorten it a little bit. So that's why I choose that way, because I could like rearrange the way I want the sentence the guy was saying in this interview. And then the process, I just had a vocoder.
My curiosity was,
let me remove everything. The vocoder is mainly to make a bit more like the voice, like a radio, sorry. You know, this kind of,
my curiosity.
As it's an old interview, it worked well to have this kind of radio kind of effect sound.
Curiosity was if such a simple molecule
Let me put that.
Allow me this type of openness.
I've just put in compressor like it's the DSL preset, just to get rid a little bit of. There is a lot of S in the sound, and it's just to get rid of.
If such a simple molecule can allow me this type of openness. My curiosity was if My curiosity was if such. My curiosity was if.
And yeah, saturation is just to add a bit of harmonics. This I just use it actually as a gain. I could have used just the utility. Because it's an interview, it's not like a normal vocal where the people are singing and there is a lot of dynamic in the voice. Here it's like more like monotonous sound, so it doesn't really need to compress. And just reverb.
My curiosity was if. My curiosity was if such a simple molecule.
And here, same as so here a bit of compression to compress everything. Here I use same way as the hats, just to get rid of a bit of.
My curiosity was if such a simple molecule can allow me.
Get rid a little bit of the tail of the reverb, but you still get this voice which is in the large space, but without having the inconvenience having a long tail.
My curiosity was if such a simple molecule can allow me this type of.
And yeah, that's.
My curiosity was if such a simple molecule can allow me this type of openness, the so-called psychedelic experience. What modifications that molecule will modify, improve, change?
So yeah, like I said, that's the way I can really play the vocal higher one. I know some people prefer work just with audio loop. That's really up to you. Then finally we have SFX. So I've put as well Snare Rll and Ride Roll in the SFX. They are not, but it's just was for mixing purpose. Basically my SFX, I like to recycle my own element and make SFX from it. I will put a link in the description. I made a video about how to do that. Like you take the ass and you dip in a lot of reverb, you freeze, flatten, and then you duplicate and reverse, and you got this kind of effect. The way why I like to do that is just like this. I don't spend 10 hours looking for the perfect SFX, because basically it's just like kind of noisy reverse sound, and use the ride, the snare or the clap, and adds. Usually that's in a lot of reverb work perfectly. You can obviously add EQ variation if you feel to like filter it, pitch it. You can go a bit more crazy. I like to keep things simple, and I use as well, I drop the bass lead as well. You can do that with the melodic element. Like sometimes it's help if you have something more in the high frequency, like to dip it as well to do the same, and can help like to put it just before to kind of introduce the element. That's work as well. And then I have Snare Rll and Ride Roll. So basically it's just for the build tension during the drops. So for the Snare Rll I use my rack. I will put the link in the description if you wanna know more about the pattern. Yeah, as you can see, the pattern is like, you can see like nothing is quantized, and there is even like almost one missing there, but I just recorded it live, it worked. I left it like this because it was working. Yeah, after it's all about automating the velocity to make it louder and louder as it goes. You can play with the decay as well. I like to filter it as well. Oops, sorry. You see, you filter it a little bit. And then I've used kind of similar things. I haven't used the rack, but I just took the ride from the ride loop that I drop into a drum rack, and same, I play the 16 note, and you can see I automate the gain, like this is getting louder and louder, and it's help as well with the drum. You see, it's helping with the tension. And the thing is, because I use as well this ride as a SFX, there is a kind of liaison. Like, for example, when this one stops, you straight away start to hear the same sound but in the reverse, and that's helpful for the transition. So yeah, I've put it in the SFX because for the final break, for mixing purpose, I needed the vocal to be more in the front, and I needed to sidechain it. Here you can see it's the vocal. There is one is the kick, which is sidechaining, and one is the vocal, like this, when the vocal is speaking, is kind of ducking the SFX. That's more like a mixing purpose And yeah, and I think that's it. Just on the mixdown, I don't have any fancy effect this time. I just have one lookup, which is like for the cut, for the shock break and stuff like that. And the second one is like I have automation, yeah, here in the final break. So I use a different EQ because obviously it was a different slope and was anyway easier to automate. And yeah, I think that's it for all the elements. I have this return effect as well. I use it just like for the break to get rid of the plug lead. I send it in a lot of reverb and it's helping me to get rid of the plug lead to introduce the main lead. That's more like an arrangement purpose rather than sound design itself. And I think that's it. So next time I will talk more about the arrangement, all about why these synths are here, what they are doing, and what was the idea, because you see there is kind of different parts. One main lead, one vocal, one which is more like the other synth playing, one is like a new lead at the end of the other track. All the idea behind that I will explain next week. I will explain as well all the mixing stuff, how I use EQ, reverb, and I will always, like usual, explain the master. And so if you don't want to miss next video, don't forget to subscribe, activate the bell notification. Thank you for watching, guys, and see you next week. Bye bye.